Hey folks, sadly Chris Cornell has passed away, lead singer of Soundgarden, Audioslave, his own solo efforts which were very, very good. And it's unfortunately another rocker, musician, whatever you want to call him, that has passed away that was so influential in the 90s and 2000s. I mean, they did music in the 80s also, Soundgarden did, but their really big breakouts came in the early 90s. But you think, you got Kurt Cobain that passed away. Years and years ago. Lane of Alice in Chains. Scott of Stone Temple Pilots. And of Velvet Revolver. And now Chris Cornell. And it's really, really sad. It just is. There's really no other way to put it. And I could list all of his songs or a bunch of his songs, but I'm going to list ones that were impactful to me. Now, that's not taking anything away from his time with Audioslave. I enjoyed Audioslave. I can't say any of their songs are my absolute favorites ever, but Cornell lent his talents and the former band members, Rage Against the Machine, they melded well, they meshed well. It worked. It worked for a while. It didn't work for too long. They were only together for 6 years, but it still worked pretty well. But for his solo effort, he had a bunch of good songs. I liked what he did for the Casino Royale opening title sequence, or the song that played over that. I like that one. I like that one in particular. I think Cornell's gifts are going to be missed. They're really going to be missed. There's no other way to say it other than it's sad. My 4 favorite Soundgarden songs, if I had to think about it, and I'm ranking them in order from 4 to 1. Black Hole Sun, and I'm nothing against Black Hole Sun. I know it's probably their most famous one. It's ranked a little lower for me. But it's still really good. And it's the one that put them on the map. And it's got a pretty scary yet influential video that fit the song pretty well. But then Spoonman's probably my favorite song of theirs to drive to. It's just really fun, really good pace. Deeper meaning to it too, but I'm talking the pace and the way they do the song was really good. And Blow Up the Outside World, great, solemn song to it that really picks up in the chorus. And then Burden in My Hand is actually probably my favorite song of theirs. And Cornell, he was clean and sober for a number of years, and I'm not going to get into whether it was a suicide, whether he relapsed and had a drug overdose. That's none of my business. That does not take away from the great career that he had and the wonderful impact he had on so many people. And how Chris Cornell was, without doubt, one of the greatest musicians, at least most gifted. Greatest you have to factor in a whole bunch of stuff. I would say he's definitely one of the best because he did it for so many years. And after getting clean, still did it well for so many years. There are some that do better when they're on drugs, and then aren't the same because they fried their brains so much. Cornell still was great. The guy was just incredible to listen to. They were still touring. Soundgarden was still touring. After breaking up in 97, going their separate ways in 97, and Cornell doing solo, and then forming Audioslave, and then still doing his solo stuff, and then reforming Soundgarden in 2010 to currently. They even had a show in Detroit where everything seemed fine, according to fans in attendance. The impact he had on a lot of people's lives, and Soundgarden, the man, had on a lot of people's lives. It's going to be felt for a while. Same with Kurt and Nirvana. Same with Lane and Alice in Chains. Same with Scott and Stone Temple Pilots. There's a lot of really good rockers, musicians that have left us, and the best thing is to remember the good times. And I'm not saying ignore the bad times. I'm not saying ignore what shaped them as people, but remember the good times. Remember the good music. Remember the stuff. Remember the positive impact that they made on your life. Any of those guys, but Cornell in particular, because he has just passed away. Soundgarden, I mean, this hits me a little harder. And try not to cry, but this hits me a little harder because they were formed in Seattle. He was born in Seattle. And, you know, that hits close to home. Like, Soundgarden was the state's band. I mean, you know, one of the big state's bands. Because they did the grunge, heavy, you know, some heavy metal, rock. They did a whole lot of that, and they did it well. And Cornell was at the forefront of that. And I'm not discounting the other band members. You need a band, a team effort to make the music work. Without Cornell's vocals, though, his incredible range, you would not have had nearly, you wouldn't have had the same success. You could have had still success, but it wouldn't have been the same success. But Cornell's gifts, his vocal gifts, his musical gifts, his ability to understand and take music in different directions, whatever project he was part of, whether it was his own, whether it was Audioslave, Soundgarden, or any bands that he, you know, became part of. Temple of the Dog, I believe, was a one-off tribute band to an old friend of his, if I remember right. I recall correctly. I mean, I've only heard a couple of their songs. Anything he was part of, he always gave his full effort in. And he leaves behind a wife. I believe he leaves behind a child or two. I'm not sure about that, but I know he leaves behind a wife. And that's very sad. I'm not going to down his memory or put down his memory if it turns out that it was a suicide or even a drug overdose. It's just really sad altogether, and I hope he's at peace now. Chris Cornell, rest in peace.